Feeling empty the moment you wake up, like there's no real reason to get out of bed anymore, can hit harder than anyone ever warned you about. It's that quiet moment right after you open your eyes, when the house is still, the air is still, and something inside you whispers, "What's the point of today?" If that feels familiar, just stay here with me for a bit. Let this be a space where you don't have to pretend everything's fine. No pressure to be positive, no pressure to stay strong, no pressure to smile through it. Just honesty. Just you and a voice that understands. Because mornings didn't always feel this heavy. There was a time when the alarm went off, and boom, the day already had a shape. You had a role, a responsibility, a place to be. There were people waiting on you, decisions to make, problems to solve, deadlines to hit. Your time mattered. Your opinion mattered. You mattered. And then suddenly, the alarm stops ringing. Not because you forgot to set it, but because life doesn't require it anymore. No one's calling. No one's asking for help. No one needs your expertise at 8:15 in the morning. Instead, there's this long, quiet stretch of hours ahead of you. Too quiet, too slow, too empty. There's this strange moment. Maybe you've felt it, where you get out of bed, walk into the living room, sit down and think, "So, what now? What am I supposed to do with myself?" And the scary part? No answer comes. The truth is, retirement, it sounds peaceful from the outside. People say things like, "You finally get to rest. You earned this. You must be so happy to be free." But deep down, you might be thinking, free to do what? Free to be who? And that question, that's the one that hurts. Because for so many years, your purpose was tied to what you did. Your value was wrapped up in the roles you carried: provider, worker, problem solver, leader, parent, protector. You were the one people relied on. You were the one who made things happen. But now the phone is quiet. The workflow is gone. The structure is gone. Even the chaos is gone. And weirdly, you miss the chaos. You might not say it out loud, but somewhere inside there's a quiet voice asking, "If no one needs what I do anymore, does anyone still need me?" It's a painful question, one that shows up in the middle of the day when you realize you've barely spoken to anyone, one that sneaks into the evenings when the house gets too silent, too still, one that floats to the surface when you catch yourself watching the clock, counting down the hours until bedtime, just so the day can finally end. And it's not just boredom. It's not laziness. It's not too much free time. It's something deeper, a sense that the part of you that used to feel useful or important or needed has gone quiet. And when that part goes quiet, everything else feels a little dimmer, a little heavier, a little more confusing. Maybe you've noticed the shift in small ways. You walk into the kitchen and forget why. You sit down to watch TV and can't focus. You think about picking up a hobby, but it doesn't excite you. Hanging out with friends isn't the same. Even going outside feels pointless. And the days start blending into each other. Monday looks like Tuesday, Tuesday looks like Thursday, and the weekend, it doesn't even feel like the weekend anymore. Because when you're no longer working, every day becomes the same color, the same rhythm, the same quiet. And that's where the pain lives, not in the lack of activities, but in the loss of identity. For decades, you knew exactly who you were. You could introduce yourself with a title. You knew your place in the world. People counted on you. People depended on you. They needed your strength, your skills, your decisions, your presence. But when that stops all at once, when the world no longer demands those things from you, you're left standing in a kind of emotional echo chamber. And that echo whispers things you never used to hear. Maybe I don't matter anymore. Maybe my best years are behind me. Maybe the meaningful part of my life is already over. And here's the truth nobody talks about enough. Those thoughts aren't crazy, they're not weak, they're not signs of failure. They're a natural response to losing something huge, a role, a purpose, a rhythm that defined you for years, even decades. You didn't just stop working. You didn't just retire. You didn't just take a break. You said goodbye to a version of yourself you lived with your entire adult life. A version that had a mission, a version that had a clear place in the world, a version that was needed. Of course there's grief. Of course there's confusion. Of course there's emptiness. This is a transition most people underestimate. You didn't lose a job. You lost an identity. And when your identity isn't clear, your purpose becomes blurry. Your motivation fades. Your energy dries up. And suddenly, even small tasks feel like climbing a mountain. You might find yourself feeling restless or irritated or sad without knowing why. You might catch yourself snapping at little things or withdrawing from conversations or staying silent when you actually want to talk. And sometimes the loneliness hits hardest when the house is full of people, because even though they're there, they don't need you the way they used to. And that shift, that invisible shift, can feel like a quiet heartbreak. If any of this sounds like you, even a little bit, then let me tell you this clearly. You're not broken. You're not weak. You're not failing at retirement. You're a human being going through a massive emotional and psychological transition, one that almost nobody prepares you for. And right now, you don't need advice. You don't need a pep talk. You don't need motivation. You just need someone to acknowledge the truth with you. This hurts. This is confusing. This is not as easy as people think. And that's exactly where we're starting. Not with solving it, not with fixing it, just with naming what's real. Because once you can say, even quietly, I'm feeling lost. I'm feeling empty. I'm not sure who I am right now. Something important happens. The fog lifts just a tiny bit. The heaviness softens just a little. You can finally take a breath. This first part of our journey is simply about letting yourself be honest. Maybe for the first time in a long time, honest about the emptiness, honest about the confusion, honest about the ache that comes with losing structure and losing purpose. And now that we've named it, called it out, seen it clearly, we can start to understand it. We can start to explore where it comes from. And eventually, gently, slowly, we can build something new in its place. But for now, just hold on to this truth. Nothing's wrong with you. You're not alone in this. And what you're feeling makes perfect sense. This is the beginning. and you don't have to go through it alone. You know, once we finally said the truth out loud, that the emptiness is real, that the heaviness is real, that the quiet sadness sits somewhere deep inside, the next thing that naturally rises up is the question, why? Why does this feel so hard? Why does retirement, something everyone calls a blessing, feel so much like loss? And it's important to sit with that question, not to judge it, not to rush it away, but to understand it. Because once you understand why this season hurts, you finally stop blaming yourself for hurting, and that alone lifts a giant weight off your chest. The thing no one tells you is that retirement isn't just an ending on paper. It's an ending inside your identity. For most of your adult life, your work wasn't just a job, it was a definition. It shaped how you introduced yourself, how people understood you, how you understood yourself. You didn't say, I'm someone who likes gardening, or I'm someone who enjoys reading. You said, I'm a nurse, or I'm an engineer, or I'm a manager, or whatever role you carried. And that role carried weight. It gave you a place in the world. Even on the toughest days, the days you were exhausted or stressed or overwhelmed, your work told you who you were. You knew why you woke up. You knew where you were going. You knew who was counting on you. There were people waiting for you, people who needed your skills, your judgment, your voice, your experience, and then suddenly, without your heart having time to prepare, that entire world goes quiet. The phone doesn't ring the same way. The emails stop. The decisions aren't yours to make anymore. No one comes to you for help, for approval, for direction. You step out of a life where you were needed, and you step into the life where the silence can feel like a verdict. And it's shocking, because it's not just about losing a job. It's about losing a version of yourself you've carried for decades. It feels a bit like walking out of a room where everyone once knew your name and stepping into a hallway where nobody recognizes you anymore. Not because they don't love you, but because your role, your title, your function in the world has shifted in a way your heart hasn't caught up with yet. Work also gave your days a rhythm, a shape. Even if you hated waking up early, even if you disliked the commute, even if the job was stressful, it still gave your life boundaries. There was a time to wake, a time to move, a time to focus, a time to come home. There were tasks, responsibilities, deadlines, conversations, problems, all of which kept your mind engaged and your energy flowing forward. Without that structure, the days start to open too wide. Morning blends into afternoon. Afternoon stretches into evening. There's no clear start, no satisfying finish. The calendar used to push you forward. Now, nothing pushes, nothing pulls. And when time loses, your identity does too. You begin to feel like you're floating through hours instead of living inside them. And then there's the part almost no one talks about, the loss of being needed. For so many years, people relied on you, your family, your coworkers, your friends, your team. You were the dependable one, the steady one, the one whose opinion mattered, the one who carried weight, the one who knew how to step in, step up, and solve the problem. And then one day, you wake up and it feels like the world doesn't need you in the same way anymore. It's not that people don't love you, they do. But their need for your constant involvement, your constant presence, your constant support, it fades. Your kids build their own lives. Your colleagues move on. Your phone stays quiet. And that quiet can feel like a kind of loneliness you can't quite explain to anyone. It's a strange thing because logically, you know this is part of the natural cycle of life. Kids grow up, work ends, seasons change. But emotionally, it can feel like you're slowly becoming invisible in a life you used to be at the center of. And that sense of invisibility seeds other feelings: irritability, sadness, restlessness, even anger at times. Sometimes you don't know why you're upset. You just feel off, unsettled, out of place. You snap it more easily. You retreat into yourself. You stop sharing your thoughts because you feel like no one would understand anyway. And all of that comes from the same root: losing your sense of place in the world. The social world shrinks too. When you were working, you didn't just have colleagues. You had a community. People you saw every day, small conversations, shared jokes, passing comments, even shared frustrations. Those interactions were tiny threads that stitched your days together. Retirement pulls those threads out all at once, and suddenly the fabric of your social life feels thinner, weaker, quieter. Even the spontaneous human interactions, saying hello to the security guard, chatting with someone in the elevator, seeing familiar faces, those vanish. And your mind notices the absence, even if you're not consciously thinking about it. It's a kind of grief, really, not the loud kind with tears and goodbyes. The quiet kind, the kind that sits in your chest like a stone, the kind you don't talk about because you don't want to seem ungrateful or dramatic or weak. But it's grief nonetheless, the grief of leaving behind a life where you were involved, plugged in, moving, contributing. People say, but now you have freedom. And maybe part of you does feel a certain freedom. But freedom without direction doesn't feel like freedom. It feels like drifting. It feels like losing the map you've been using your whole life. It feels like being handed an empty page when you don't know what to write. And if we're being completely honest, there's another layer too: the loss of momentum. You spent years in motion. You were building things, learning things, pushing through challenges, growing. The engine inside you was always running, but when work ends, that engine doesn't know how to shut off gracefully. It either keeps running with nowhere to go, creating anxiety and restlessness, or it sputters and goes quiet, leaving you tired, unmotivated, or numb. So when someone casually says, "You should enjoy it, you've earned it," they have no idea that a whole internal world is shifting, collapsing, reshaping itself inside you, and that reshaping isn't painless. Every major transition in life comes with discomfort. Becoming a parent, moving away from home, losing a loved one, starting over. Retirement is no different. It is a psychological earthquake disguised as a peaceful milestone. And then there's the fear. Not a dramatic fear, but a subtle one. The fear that the most meaningful part of your life is behind you. You look backward and see decades full of purpose, pressure, duty, love, sacrifice, and you look ahead and see nothing clear, just empty space, a long horizon of unstructured time, and you don't know what to build on it. That fear is heavy. It sits in your stomach. It wears 1,000 disguises: boredom, sadness, isolation, irritability, loss of interest. But underneath all of it is a quiet anxiety. What now? What's next? Who do I become? And here's the part I want you to hear more than anything else. There's nothing wrong with you for feeling this way. Nothing. You're not failing at retirement. You're not ungrateful. You're not weak. You're not thinking too much. You are going through something profoundly human. The rebuilding of identity. When work falls away, when titles fall away, when being needed falls away, you're left with yourself. And that confrontation can be one of the most intense emotional experiences of adulthood. This stage of life asks questions you never had time to sit with before. Who am I without my role? Who am I when no one needs something from me? What is my worth now? What does purpose even mean at this stage? These questions aren't symptoms of a problem. They're signs of a transition. They're the doorways to the next chapter of your life. But walking through those doorways takes courage, patience, and understanding. It takes the willingness to sit with the discomfort rather than running from it. And the real truth is this: you're not alone, not even a little. Millions of people around the world go through the same invisible grief, the same identity shock, the same quiet confusion. They just don't talk about it, partly because they think it's embarrassing, partly because they don't want to burden others, and partly because no one ever told them this was normal. But it is normal. It is common. It is human. And it is survivable. Once you understand the emotional mechanics behind your pain, something powerful happens. The pain stops feeling like a personal flaw. It stops feeling like something you caused. It stops feeling like something you should be ashamed of. It becomes what it truly is: a natural, meaningful, deeply human passage from one chapter of life into another. And that new chapter isn't empty. It's just unwritten. It needs a new kind of purpose, not the old one. It needs a new rhythm, not the one that came from work. It needs a new identity, one built from wisdom instead of obligation, from choice instead of duty. But we're not there yet. Right now, we're still in the part of the journey where you're allowed to feel what you feel, where understanding replaces guilt, where clarity replaces confusion. We're still in the part where I want you to breathe a little easier, knowing you're not broken, you're not lost forever. What you're experiencing makes perfect psychological sense. And once you can accept that, gently, quietly, you're finally ready for the next step: rebuilding meaning, rediscovering value, and redefining what your life can look like now that this new chapter has opened. And that's where we'll go next. You know, after understanding why retirement feels so heavy, something else becomes really important. Realizing that you're not the only one walking through this storm. Even though it might feel like it sometimes, You're not the only person staring at quiet mornings, long afternoons, and slow evenings, wondering where the old version of yourself went. You're not the only one feeling like the world shifted while you weren't looking. It's strange how loneliness works, isn't it? It's never just about being physically alone. Loneliness is really about feeling like no one else understands your experience, your thoughts, your fears, the way your days blur together. It's the sense that you're carrying something silent that no one else sees. But what if I told you that this feeling, this exact mix of confusion, sadness, restlessness, and emptiness, is something millions of people go through after retirement? People who look strong on the outside, people who seem to have it all figured out, people who smile at family gatherings or chat casually with neighbors, people who nod politely when others say, "Must be nice to finally relax," even though inside their hearts feel like they're floating without an anchor. There's a story I want to share with you, not because your life is the same, but because the emotions are familiar. Let me tell you about a man I'll call Robert. He retired after 38 years at the same company. 38 years of waking up early, eating the same breakfast, taking the same drive to work, greeting the same co-workers, solving the same kinds of problems, and ending each day feeling like he contributed something. And then one day, none of that was there. At first, he was excited. He told himself he'd sleep in, watch movies, catch up on all the little joys he'd missed. And for a few weeks, it really did feel like freedom. But slowly, almost too slowly to notice at first, the silence of his days started to weigh on him. He found himself wandering from the kitchen to the living room without a plan. He checked the time constantly. He felt guilty resting because resting didn't feel earned anymore. He felt restless, but he didn't know what he was restless for. And one morning, he told me this. He woke up, sat on the edge of the bed, and felt nothing. Not sadness, not excitement, just nothing. And that scared him more than anything else, because he had always been someone in motion, someone with purpose, someone needed. But he didn't tell anyone. He didn't want to worry his wife. He didn't want to seem ungrateful. He didn't want people to think he was strange for not enjoying the good life. So he kept it all inside. Months later, when we finally talked openly about it, he said the same words so many others say. "I thought I was the only one who felt this lost." But he wasn't, not even close. Let me tell you about someone else, a woman I'll call Linda. She spent her life raising kids, running a household, and working part-time. She was the emotional center of her family, the one everyone came to for comfort, advice, help, or just a warm meal at the end of a long day. But kids grow up. They move out. They build their own families, their own routines, their own lives. And suddenly, Linda went from being the heart of the home to being a visitor in her own quiet kitchen. She told me once that she walked into her living room one evening and realized with a sting that no one needed her the way they used to. It wasn't that they didn't love her. They did. It was just that life had naturally moved forward around her. She felt invisible, not unloved, just unseen. And when she tried to talk about it, people brushed it off. "You should enjoy your freedom," they said. "Take time for yourself." But the problem wasn't time. It wasn't freedom. It was that, for the first time since she was young, she didn't know what her days were supposed to mean. And again, she thought she was the only one, You may not see these stories in other people because most people tuck these emotions neatly away. They smile. They keep busy with hobbies or errands or chores. They post photos, attend gatherings, laugh at jokes, and say all the right things. But inside, they're quietly wondering why this stage of life feels so confusing, so empty, so hollow. You might even know someone like that, someone who seems absolutely fine. But if you sat with them long enough and asked gently enough, they'd tell you a truth very close to yours. The thing is, none of these experiences are signs of personal failure. They are signs of being human. Because humans don't lose decades-long identities and immediately bounce back. Humans don't go from being needed every day to being needed occasionally and feel nothing. Humans don't watch their routines dissolve without feeling disoriented. Humans don't watch their children become independent without feeling the ache of shifting roles. This transition isn't small. It isn't light. It isn't something you just get over. Retirement is a major emotional earthquake, quiet, internal, subtle, but powerful. And the truth is, people rarely talk about the emotional side of it. They talk about the finances, the travel plans, the time off, the relaxation, but they don't talk about the grief. They don't talk about the identity shift. They don't talk about waking up and not knowing who they are without work or constant responsibility. So, of course, you felt alone. How could you not? Everyone else is pretending it's easy. Everyone else is hiding the cracks. Everyone else is masking the confusion with jokes and distractions. But underneath that surface, so many people are carrying the same quiet heaviness you are. I remember talking to a retired teacher once. She said the strangest thing happened a few months after she stopped working. She found herself sitting in her living room at 11 a.m., staring at the wall, and suddenly thinking, if I disappeared today, would anything change? It wasn't a dramatic or dangerous thought. She wasn't hopeless. It was just an honest reflection of how disconnected she felt from the world she used to belong to. And then she laughed in that sad, embarrassed way people do when they admit painful truths. She said, I know it sounds dramatic. I know I shouldn't think that way, but I just felt like I faded. And that word, faded, stuck with me. Because that's what so many people feel in this chapter. Not gone, not broken, not unloved, just faded, like life is happening at full speed around them, and they're watching from behind a quiet glass window. But here's the part that matters. She wasn't alone either. When she finally opened up to a friend, the friend confessed the exact same feeling. They'd both been sitting in their own houses, believing the other person was doing fine, when, in reality, they were mirroring each other's loneliness. And maybe that's happening around you too. Maybe you know people, neighbors, relatives, friends, who you assume are handling retirement effortlessly. But chances are those people have had their own moments of doubt, confusion, or emptiness. They just haven't said it out loud. You know what else? Even the people who seem the busiest, the ones traveling, golfing, gardening, socializing, they go home at the end of the day and still feel that quiet moment where the question rises, what's my place in the world now? activity is not the same as meaning, and staying busy isn't the same as feeling whole. If you could look beneath the surface of other people's lives, you'd see so many stories that look like yours. People lying awake at night wondering why they feel unsettled. People eating lunch alone thinking about the version of themselves they used to be. People walking through grocery aisles slowly, not because they want to, but because they don't know what else to do with the day. You are not alone, not in your confusion, not in your sadness, not in your restlessness, not in the way you miss the structure, the noise, the purpose, the daily interactions, not in the way you sometimes feel invisible, not in the way you sometimes feel guilty for being unhappy even though life should be easier now, not in the way you sometimes feel like you lost something important, even if you can't fully name what it is. You're walking a path that millions walk silently, and the beautiful thing is you're listening to this. That means you're not shutting down. You're not giving up. You're not burying your feelings under distractions. You're looking them in the eye, even if it's uncomfortable. That alone sets you apart from so many people who suffer quietly without ever seeking understanding. You're doing something incredibly brave just by being here. And this moment, this realization that you're not alone, is the beginning of something powerful. Because loneliness shrinks when it's named. Pain softens when it's shared. And when you start to see that your feelings are not unique in a shameful way, but common in a deeply human way, something opens inside you, a little space, a little light, a sense of permission. Permission to feel what you feel. Permission to move at your own pace. Permission to rebuild without pressure. Permission to rediscover purpose without rushing. There's a whole community of people walking this same road, some ahead of you, some alongside you, some a little behind, all figuring out how to recreate themselves after a chapter ends. And you are one of them. Not isolated, not forgotten, not strange, not lost beyond repair, just human, deeply, beautifully human. Experiencing a change that's bigger than most people realize. And when you understand that, when you truly absorb that you're not walking this path alone, the road starts feeling less frightening, less dark, less heavy. Because now you know, truly know that you're part of something larger, a universal human shift, a shared emotional landscape, a journey that so many others have walked through and come out stronger, clearer, and more grounded on the other side. And that's where we're headed next, toward meaning, toward purpose, toward rebuilding something new. But before we go there, let this truth settle gently inside you. You are not alone, not now, not ever in this experience. And everything you're feeling, someone else has felt too. You know, after going through the emptiness, the confusion, the loneliness, and the quiet grief that retirement brings, something gentle begins to happen. It's subtle at first, a kind of shift inside, a realization that if this chapter of life is going to have meaning, the meaning won't come from the same places it used to. And that's where this part of the journey begins. Not with pressure, not with expectations, but with the softest question. If I'm no longer defined by what I used to do, then what else could define me? It's a question that might feel scary at first, because for so long your purpose came from roles that were clear-cut. You woke up and you knew who you were. You were the worker, the parent, the provider, the fixer, the problem solver, the steady one. You carried responsibilities that told you that you mattered. And when those responsibilities fade, you can feel like the floor drops out from under you. But here's the truth that often takes time to see. When one source of purpose disappears, it doesn't mean purpose itself disappears. It just means that the form, the shape, the expression of it has to change. And change can be uncomfortable, but it can also be deeply liberating once the fog begins to lift. There's a moment somewhere after the grief and the confusion when the question starts to shift from "Who am I now?" to "Who else could I become?" And that moment, even if it's small, even if it's fragile, is the beginning of rediscovery. Because the end of a role is not the end of you. The end of a job is not the end of your value. The end of being constantly needed is not the end of being meaningful. It just means you're entering a chapter where your purpose is no longer handed to you. It's chosen, crafted, shaped by your own hands. And yes, that can feel overwhelming. It can feel like staring at a blank page with no idea where to begin. But blank pages aren't empty because nothing exists. They're empty because anything is possible. Think about all the versions of yourself you've been through your life. You weren't just one thing. You weren't just one role. You didn't wake up at 18 and magically become the person you were at 50 or 60. You changed, you adapted, chapters ended, new ones started. You learned, failed, rebuilt, survived, grew. You've been reinventing yourself your entire life. This is just another moment like that. The difference is that this time, the world isn't giving you a script. You get to write your own. And maybe right now you're thinking, but I don't know what I want. I don't know what I'm good for anymore. That feeling is valid. That uncertainty is honest. After a lifetime of being directed by necessity, by work, by family, by responsibility, it's natural to feel lost when no one else is directing you anymore. It takes time to turn inward and ask yourself what you actually want, maybe for the first time in decades. One of the quiet truths about retirement is that many people reach it without ever having lived for themselves. They lived for their job, for their children, for their reputation, for their family's needs, for survival. And when the noise fades and the responsibilities slip away, there is suddenly space. Space that feels frightening at first because it's so unfamiliar. But that same space can become possibility. Purpose in this chapter doesn't have to be big or dramatic. It doesn't have to look like saving the world or launching a project or doing something impressive. Purpose here is simpler, quieter, more personal. It's about meaning, the kind of meaning that makes you feel connected, alive, useful to yourself or someone else in a way that feels authentic. And sometimes that meaning comes from small things. Sometimes it comes from moments rather than missions. Sometimes it is as simple as being present in a way you never had time to be before. You still carry a lifetime of wisdom, the kind that can't be taught in a classroom or read in a book. You carry patience earned from decades of storms. You carry stories that can help others feel less alone. You carry perspective that only comes from surviving and growing. You carry a version of strength that isn't loud or flashy, but steady and dependable. These things didn't disappear when you put away your work ID. They didn't fade when you stopped being someone's manager, someone's mentor, someone's daily support system. They live inside you. They always will. The challenge now is recognizing that your value is no longer tied to productivity or output. It's tied to who you are as a human being, not just what you can do. I once spoke with a retired doctor who spent 40 years saving lives. After retirement, he told me he felt useless, like every day was a painful reminder that he wasn't contributing anymore. When I asked him what he missed most, he said, being part of something that mattered. And when I asked him if he believed he still had wisdom to share, he laughed softly and said, wisdom, yes, but who wants wisdom from an old man? I told him, anyone who hasn't lived as much as you have. For months, he fought the emptiness. He filled his days with activities, hobbies, distractions, but nothing filled the hole. Then one day, he agreed to volunteer at a small community center, just once a week, helping young medical students who were terrified about their first steps into the field. He didn't do procedures. He didn't diagnose anyone. He didn't work. He just listened. He shared stories. He offered perspective, and something unexpected happened. He discovered that the part of life he missed, the part where he mattered, didn't disappear. It simply needed a new place to land. He realized that purpose doesn't retire. It just shifts into new forms. And that's true for you too. Purpose at this stage of life might come from connection, from being someone's safe place, someone's listener, someone's source of calm. Purpose might come from creativity, from things you never had time to explore. Writing, painting, cooking, building, learning, expressing what was always inside you. Purpose might come from sharing your skills, your history, your memories, your time, your kindness. Purpose might come from tending to your health, to your home, to relationships that need patience and gentleness. Purpose might come from curiosity, not about what the world demands from you, but about what your heart whispers to you. When you stop identifying with the roles that ended, you make room for the parts of yourself that never had space to breathe before. You begin to see that your value isn't in how much pressure you can carry, but in how deeply you can live. You don't have to rush this process. You don't have to figure everything out. You don't have to pretend to know your purpose right now. Redefining your value isn't about having an answer. It's about allowing yourself to explore without judgment. There's a quiet exercise I often suggest, one that doesn't require writing or speaking, just noticing. When you wake up tomorrow, instead of asking, "What do I have to do today?" try asking, "What feels meaningful today?" Maybe the answer is reaching out to someone you care about. Maybe it's walking outside and feeling the sunlight on your skin. Maybe it's reading something that opens your mind. Maybe it's organizing a drawer and feeling a tiny bit of order return to your day. Maybe it's sitting with a cup of tea and letting yourself breathe intentionally. Meaning doesn't always announce itself with fireworks. Sometimes it whispers, and you hear it only when you slow down enough to listen. The world told you for decades that your worth was tied to productivity, to output, to busyness, to being needed. But what if worth is actually tied to presence, to kindness, to what you notice and what you appreciate, to how deeply you key and how quietly you show up, to the way your existence softens someone else's day, even if they never tell you? A lot of people fear that their best years are behind them. But the truth is, the years ahead hold something your earlier life didn't. The chance to live deliberately. When you were younger, your life was shaped by survival, responsibility, expectations, obligations. Now, for the first time, you have space to shape it from the inside out. Redefining purpose doesn't require dramatic change. It requires gentle honesty. What brings you peace? What sparks curiosity? What makes you feel connected to the world outside your door? What makes you feel connected to yourself? When you let go of the pressure to return to who you used to be, you open the door to becoming someone wiser, kinder, and more authentic. You stop measuring yourself by standards that no longer apply. You stop punishing yourself for not being endlessly useful. You start accepting that your existence has value simply because you're here, and that value doesn't expire. Maybe the most important truth in this stage of life is this: you are still becoming. You didn't reach the end, you reached a turning point. A moment where you can choose what the next chapter will feel like. You carry decades of stories, lessons, emotions, scars, resilience, and quiet strength. Not everyone lives long enough to reach a chapter where they can look back with clarity and forward with intention. You've earned the right to define this stage on your own terms. And the purpose you find now doesn't have to match the purpose you had before. It doesn't have to impress anyone. It doesn't have to resemble anyone else's path. It only has to feel true. Slowly, gently, day by day, you will begin to realize that the emptiness wasn't a sign of the end. It was the clearing of space. And the space is not there to punish you. It's there to invite you to build a life rooted not in duty, but in depth, not in obligation, but in meaning, not in being needed, but in being whole. And you don't have to rush. You don't have to know the destination. You only have to stay open to the possibility that your life still has purpose, just not the same purpose it had before, because you are still here. And being here is enough to begin again. Now that we've looked at the pain, the confusion, the loneliness, and the process of rediscovering purpose, there comes a moment, a soft, transitional moment, where the next natural question is, so what do I do with my days now? It's a question that doesn't come from pressure, but from curiosity. It's the moment when the fog starts to thin just enough for you to wonder whether your life, even in this stage, can feel a little fuller, a little lighter, a little more meaningful. And the truth is, rebuilding purpose isn't about giant changes or dramatic decisions. It's not about suddenly reinventing your whole life. It's not about waking up tomorrow with a master plan. It's about something much smaller, much kinder, the gentle shaping of your days. Because meaning doesn't arrive as a thunderbolt. Meaning grows quietly, like a seed you water a little at a time. There is a kind of magic in small actions. Not the kind of magic that transforms everything overnight, but the kind that slowly reawakens parts of you that you thought had gone silent. And this stage of life, more than any other, responds beautifully to small acts of intention. Your days don't need to be packed. They don't need to look like your old routine. They simply need a few soft anchors, little rituals that remind you that you are here, that you matter, and that your life is still unfolding. Think about how your mornings used to feel. There was structure, movement, urgency. Now, the mornings are wide open, and wide open can feel like emptiness. But what if those mornings could become gentle invitations instead of empty spaces? What if waking up didn't have to feel like a question, but like the beginning of something lightly meaningful? Imagine this. You wake up tomorrow, and before anything else, before checking your phone, before drifting through the quiet, you take a moment to breathe with intention. Not to meditate, not to force calm, not to do anything impressive, but simply to remind your body that you are alive, that you are here, and that the day belongs to you. A slow inhale, a soft exhale, a few seconds to arrive fully into the morning, and maybe after that breath you drink a glass of water. You feel it wake your body gently. You stand by the window and look outside for just a moment, not to judge the weather, not to plan anything, but to remind yourself that the world is still moving, and so are you. These aren't tasks. They aren't chores. They're gentle signals to your brain that life still has rhythm, and that rhythm begins with you. And then maybe, instead of asking yourself, "What should I do today?" you ask, "What feels nourishing?" It's a softer question. It's kinder. It gives you room to explore. And the answer might be small. Something like stepping outside for a short walk, or stretching your body just enough to loosen the stiffness, or sitting with a warm cup of coffee and letting yourself truly taste it instead of rushing through it like you did for years. What you do in the morning doesn't need to be impressive. It just needs to be deliberate, because deliberate moments create a sense of presence. When you choose to do something, even something tiny, your brain starts to remember what purpose feels like. Not through pressure, but through attention. And then the day begins to unfold. There will still be hours that feel long, moments when the quiet rises up again. But here's the beautiful thing. When you anchor your day with small, intentional actions, those long hours start to feel less like empty stretches and more like open space you can gently fill. One of the most powerful shifts you can make in this chapter of life is to stop thinking of your day as something you need to get through, and start thinking of it as something you can shape moment by moment. There is no rush. There is no deadline. There is no boss waiting. The only thing waiting is possibility. For years, you lived on autopilot. You woke up, went to work, handled responsibilities, kept going even when you were tired. You didn't have time to listen to yourself, but now Now you have that time. You have space to discover what actually brings you comfort, what actually brings you joy, what actually makes you feel connected. Maybe during the afternoon, you choose something small, something that gives your hands or your mind a little purpose. It might be learning something you always wished you had time for. It might be tending to plants, even just one. It might be reading a few pages of a book or going through old photos or cooking something slowly instead of rushing a meal. It might be calling someone you care about, not because they need anything from you, but because connection itself is meaningful. And maybe there will be days when you don't feel like doing much at all. And that's okay too. You're not building a productivity plan. You're building a life that fits the rhythm of your soul now, not the rhythm of your past roles. Some people find meaning in creating something. Others find it in learning. Others in helping someone, even in small ways. And others simply in savoring the quiet in ways they never had the chance to before. There isn't a right answer here. There's only what feels right to you. One of the most healing habits you can form is to end each day with a moment of reflection. Not evaluation, not judgment, just reflection. Sitting quietly, asking yourself, what did today to give me? What did I give today? Maybe it was peace. Maybe it was a smile. Maybe it was a memory. Maybe it was simply getting through the day, which is sometimes enough. Allowing yourself to notice the small good things teaches your brain to search for meaning instead of emptiness. And as the days gently stack on top of each other, something starts to shift. Those small routines, the breath in the morning, the walk outside, the moment of connection, the act of creating or learning, they begin to form a new kind of structure, not rigid, not demanding, but steady, a structure built by you for you. What makes the biggest difference in this stage of life isn't how busy you are, it's how intentional you are. Even one meaningful action a day can slowly rebuild the sense of direction you've been missing. One gentle step after another, one soft moment after the next. You may find that your energy rises on some days and falls on others. That's human. That's normal. What matters is that you don't judge the low days. They're part of the rhythm too. On the days you feel stronger, you may choose to explore more. A longer walk, a new class, a hobby you've always wanted to try. A community group, a volunteer opportunity. Not because you should, but because you feel drawn to it. And on the days when energy is low, the kindest thing you can do is simply honor where you are. Breathe, rest, move slowly, choose softness. Healing doesn't happen in straight lines. Rediscovery doesn't follow a schedule. You're allowed to take your time. One of the small but powerful practices many people find helpful is selecting a daily anchor. One thing, no matter how simple, that you commit to doing every day. It might be sitting outside for 5 minutes. It might be tidying one corner of the house. It might be writing down one memory. It might be drinking a full glass of water first thing in the morning. It might be sending a short message to someone you care about. Something so small that it feels almost silly. But over time, these tiny anchors give your day shape. They create continuity. They remind you that you're still moving, still choosing, still living with intention. And when you start stringing these moments together, something remarkable happens. You begin to trust yourself again. You begin to feel capable again. You begin to feel engaged with life, even in the smallest ways. You begin to see that meaning doesn't come from doing something dramatic. It comes from being present, from noticing the texture of your days, from participating in your life instead of drifting through it. There's something else too, something people rarely talk about. At this stage of life, small acts of kindness toward others can carry a surprising amount of meaning. Not because you're trying to be useful the way you used to be, but because kindness connects you to the world. Maybe you hold the door for someone. Maybe you smile at a stranger. Maybe you check in on someone who lives alone. Maybe you bake something for a neighbor. Maybe you offer a listening ear to someone who's going through their own transition. These acts don't demand much, but they give you something invaluable, a sense of connection, of humanity, of relevance. Every small gesture is a reminder, I still matter. I still have something to offer. I'm still part of the world. And you are. You always were. You just needed a different way of seeing it. As you begin exploring these gentle habits and small actions, you might find yourself discovering new parts of who you are, parts that were quiet for years because life was too busy, too demanding, too loud. You might rediscover a curiosity about things you once loved when you were younger. You might find joy in taking care of your body in ways you never had time for before. You might develop a new appreciation for slowness, for mornings without alarms, for conversations that aren't rushed, for hobbies that aren't tied to deadlines. This chapter of life has space for you to feel everything: the grief, the confusion, the relief, the curiosity. And within that space, you get to build the habits that will carry you forward. Not habits that make you feel pressured or obligated, but habits that nurture you, ground you, and remind you that you have permission to grow. Your days don't have to be perfect. They don't have to be productive. They just have to be lived with intention. And intention doesn't mean effort. It means awareness. It means choosing softness. It means choosing presence. It means choosing yourself, something you may not have been taught to do for most of your life. Over time, these small, gentle actions become the foundation of a new rhythm, a rhythm not built on responsibility or obligation, but on meaning, a rhythm that helps you feel rooted again, even as you move through the unknown. A rhythm that reminds you, quietly, tenderly, that purpose didn't leave you. It simply changed forms. You're building something new. You're learning how to inhabit this stage of life with grace, patience, and truth. And that is something to be proud of, not because it's impressive, but because it's real, because it's human, because it's yours. And as this new rhythm begins to settle into your life, you might find yourself doing something you didn't expect, looking forward to this again, not with urgency, not with pressure, but with a kind of gentle anticipation. That sense of maybe today can hold something good, is the quiet beginning of hope. It's the soft return of purpose. It's the moment your heart realizes what your mind has been learning, that life after retirement can still be full, still be meaningful, still be yours to shape. And that brings us to the next part of our journey, the part where all of this comes together, the part where encouragement meets possibility, and where the small seeds you've planted begin to form the next chapter of your life. But for now, take a breath. You've already done something important. You've begun. As we reach this final part of the journey, I want you to take a slow breath and let everything we've talked about settle gently inside you. You've walked through the heaviness, the confusion, the loneliness, the rediscovery, the quiet rebuilding of your days. You've allowed yourself to look honestly at what hurts, at what's changed, at what's been lost. And you've also opened the door, even if only a little, to what can still be found. And that alone is brave. Most people never take the time to understand themselves this deeply. They bury their feelings beneath distractions, pretend they're fine, or try to outrun the silence by filling their days with noise. But you didn't do that. You chose to listen. You chose to reflect. You chose to walk through the discomfort instead of running from it. And that choice, that quiet courage, matters more than you know. Because this stage of life, this chapter you're standing in, isn't about endings. It's about transformation. It's about learning how to live not out of obligation anymore, but out of intention. No more working because you have to. No more rushing because you're required to. No more giving until you're empty, just to keep up. This is the first time in decades where the direction of your days belongs to you, and only you. But I know it doesn't feel that way at the beginning. At first, the quiet feels like loss. The lack of structure feels like drift. The empty calendar feels like a void. And the mind, when it doesn't know where to place itself, often whispers painful things like, "You're not needed anymore," or "Your best years are gone," or "You don't have value now that your roles have changed." But look at how far you've come since then. You named the pain you were carrying. You understood the reasons behind it, the identity shifts, the loss of routine, the shrinking of your social world, the fading of roles that once made you feel solid. You discovered you weren't alone, not even close, and you began exploring what your life could look like beyond work, beyond duty, beyond the definitions you carried for so long. You started seeing that your value didn't disappear. It simply needed a new place to land. And now, as we come to this closing moment, I want to give you something that matters deeply. A reminder, a truth, a quiet promise you can carry with you long after these words end. You are still becoming. You haven't reached the end of your story. You haven't used up your purpose. You haven't lived your last meaningful day. There is more in you than the roles you once filled. There is more ahead of you than the years behind you. Your worth isn't tied to productivity anymore. Your value isn't measured by how much you can carry or how hard you can push. Your purpose isn't defined by who depends on you. Your purpose now is rooted in something softer, deeper, more human, in connection, in presence, in experience, in curiosity, in the simple act of waking up and choosing to create meaning, even if it's small, even if it's quiet. And that is enough. You are enough. Life at this stage doesn't ask you to become someone extraordinary. It asks you to become someone true, someone who listens to themselves, someone who honors their energy, someone who notices the beauty in things they once rushed past, someone who chooses moments of meaning over mountains of responsibility. It asks you to slow down without stopping, to rest without fading, to breathe without guilt, to explore without pressure. It asks you to remember that joy isn't only found in accomplishment. Sometimes it's found in sitting outside for 5 minutes and feeling the air on your skin. Sometimes it's found in a conversation that warms your heart. Sometimes it's found in learning something new, or doing something old, or letting yourself laugh at something silly. Sometimes it's found in simply being alive in a way you never got to be when the world was pulling at you from every direction. And if ever there's a day when the heaviness creeps back in, and it will, because healing isn't linear, I want you to remember this. You don't have to solve everything in a day. You don't have to fix all the feelings at once. You don't have to know your purpose immediately. You don't have to force yourself to feel okay. You just have to take one gentle step, one breath, one small act of intention, one moment of choosing to keep moving, even if the movement is slow. Because every new beginning starts with one step, not a leap, not a sprint, just a step. And maybe that step is as simple as telling yourself, I'm allowed to grow again, or I'm allowed to try, or I'm allowed to hope, or I'm allowed to build something new. You've spent your whole life being strong for other people. Now it's time to be strong for yourself. The kind of strength that doesn't push or strain, but the kind that nurtures, the kind that softens, the kind that builds quietly from inside. And as you take these steps, the small habits, the gentle routines, the meaningful moments, something beautiful will begin to happen. You'll start feeling more grounded, more connected, more present. You'll start recognizing the person you're becoming, not just the person you used to be. And slowly, almost without noticing it, the question, what am I doing with my life now, will start to shift into what kind of life do I want to create next? And you will create one, not all at once, not in some grand dramatic transformation, but in the quiet, honest ways that matter the most. There is still love waiting for you, still connection, still discovery, still joy, still meaning, still purpose, still laughter, still gentleness, still new chapters you haven't even imagined yet. This isn't the end. This is the clearing of space before the next beginning. And you don't have to walk into that beginning alone. You carry with you everything you've learned, everything you've survived, everything you've become, and you carry the wisdom to shape this part of life on your own terms. When the days feel heavy, return to these words. When the loneliness whispers, remember that millions feel what you feel. When the emptiness rises, remind yourself that emptiness is just space waiting to be filled. with something new. When you feel lost, remember that being lost is the first step of being found. And when you doubt yourself, hold on to this. You have already begun. You're already on the path. You're already moving toward a version of life that feels lighter, truer, more yours. So let this be the closing thought, not an ending, but a gentle invitation. May you wake up tomorrow and feel the smallest spark of curiosity. May you notice one beautiful thing in your day. May you do one tiny act that makes your world feel a little more alive. May you trust that meaning is returning slowly, quietly, steadily. And may you remember always that your story is still unfolding. You have time, you have space, you have value, and you have a future worth walking toward. And I'll be right here whenever you need a voice to guide you, a reminder to hold on to, or a moment of encouragement to lean on, walking beside you, step by step as your next chapter begins.